No big words, no loud threats. Russia's first reaction to outgoing US President Biden's risky war move was even more chilling than that. In less than 10 words, Moscow revived fears of a nuclear conflict between Russia and the NATO alliance led by America. The latest flashpoint is Biden reportedly allowing Ukraine to start using American long-range missiles for attacks deep into Russian territory. The president has expressed his opinion on this matter. This is what the Russian government said as the news broke. Moscow's reaction appeared to refer to two recent statements on camera by Vladimir Putin. A day later, Russia reinforced the message by implementing Putin's earlier warning. Here's a look at what Putin has threatened in response to Ukraine using Western weapons for deep strikes into Russia, and how incoming US President Donald Trump might react to the sudden rise in hostilities. In September, news first emerged of the United Kingdom agreeing to Ukraine President Zelensky's long-standing demand of using Western weapons to strike deep into Russia, not just at the front lines. Subsequently, Russian President Putin appeared on camera to warn that such a move would constitute NATO's direct entry into the Ukraine war. In recent days we have seen and heard at very high levels in United Kingdom and the United States that the Kyiv regime will be able to strike deep into Russian territory with Western long-range weapons. Apparently this decision is either about to be taken or has already been taken. And these are, of course, extraordinary things. I would like to ask you to comment on what is happening. There is an attempt to change the meaning of concepts. We are not talking about allowing or forbidding the Kyiv regime to carry out attacks on Russian territory. It is already doing so with the help of unmanned aerial vehicles and other means. But when it comes to using Western-made long-range precision weapons, it's a different story. The fact is, as I have already said, and as any expert will confirm, both in our country and in the West, the Ukrainian army is incapable of striking with modern Western-made long-range precision systems. This is possible only with the use of intelligence from satellites, which Ukraine does not have. It is only data from satellites of the European Union or the United States, generally from NATO satellites. That is the first thing. The second and very important thing, perhaps the key one, is that only NATO servicemen can enter flight orders for these missile systems. Ukrainian servicemen cannot do that. So it is not a question of allowing the Ukrainian regime to attack Russia with these weapons or not. It's a question of deciding whether or not NATO countries are directly involved in a military conflict. If this decision is taken, it will mean nothing but direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States, European countries in the war in Ukraine. Their direct involvement. And certainly, it considerably changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict, implying that NATO countries, the United States, European countries are at war with Russia. And in this case, given the change of the conflict's nature, we will take appropriate measures based on the threats we face. Just 2 weeks later, Putin announced proposed changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine. Putin said that Moscow might use nuclear weapons if it is attacked by a non-nuclear state but with the help of a nuclear power. Today we are holding a scheduled meeting. The meeting is called the Permanent Meeting on Nuclear Deterrence and it is held twice a year. And on today's agenda we have an issue related to updating the basic principles of state policy on nuclear deterrence. Together with the military doctrine, this is the document that officially defines and details Russia's nuclear strategy. First of all, it lays down the basic principle of the use of nuclear weapons, namely that the use of nuclear forces is an extreme measure to protect the country's sovereignty. I underline that we have always approached these issues in a highly responsible manner. Well aware of the enormous power of these weapons, we have sought to strengthen the international legal basis for global stability and to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons and their components. Today, the nuclear triad remains the main guarantee of the security of our state and our citizens and an instrument for maintaining strategic parity and the balance of power in the world. At the same time, we see that the current military and political situation is changing dynamically, and we must take this into account. This includes the emergence of new sources of military threats and risks to Russia and our allies. It is important to anticipate the development of the situation and to adapt the provisions of the strategic planning document accordingly. Over the past year, the experts of the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Security Council and other agencies have conducted a deep and comprehensive analysis and assessed the necessity of amending our approach to the potential use of nuclear forces. Following the results of this work, a number of clarifications have been proposed regarding the conditions for deploying nuclear weapons. For instance, the draft of basic principles extends the category of states and military alliances that are subject to nuclear deterrence and complements the list of military threats that require nuclear deterrence measures to be neutralized. I would also like to draw your particular attention to another issue. The amended document defines aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, though with the involvement or support of a nuclear state, as a joint attack against the Russian Federation. It also explicitly defines the conditions for Russia's transition to nuclear weapons use. We will consider such a possibility upon obtaining reliable information on the massive attack launched by aerospace weapons, crossing of our state border. I am referring to strategic and tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, UAVs, hypersonic and other aircraft. We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in the case of aggression against Russia and Belarus as a member of the Union state. All the issues have been discussed with the Belarusian side and with the President of Belarus. It also applies if an enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat to our sovereignty. I would like to conclude by noting that all the clarifications are highly accurate and correspond to the current military threats and risks against the Russian Federation. Let us proceed with our work. I now give the floor to the Minister of Defense Andrei Rymovich Belousov. On November 19, Putin implemented this threat, signing a decree broadening the scope of Moscow nuclear policy, allowing nuclear attack on a non-nuclear state if it is supported by nuclear powers. Russia has already held several rounds of nuclear weapons exercises in recent months. As tensions between Russia and America skyrocket, USA's allies are not on the same page. NATO member Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico openly called Biden's missile move senseless and counterproductive, as per RT News. However, another NATO member, Poland, welcomed the development.
Proszę Państwa, jutro będzie dokładnie 1000 dni odkąd Rosja napadła na Ukrainę.
Well, but also, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow will be exactly 1000 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, and this will certainly be the second 0f the most important topics of our conversation. Here, in turn, I will certainly be asked for our assessment of this situation, as we see it, also in the context of what is happening today in this global space. We are all familiar with the decision made by President Joe Biden. We see a definite intensification in the last especially days of Russian attacks on Ukraine, and especially those missile attacks where they attacked. There are civilian facilities where people, ordinary residents of Ukraine, are simply killed, ordinary citizens, not soldiers, so this is a very drastic situation. There is approval from President Joe Biden for the device, the use of American-donated missiles of such medium range, and the ability to attack targets in Russia with them, so this is a very important change, which is taking place there at the moment. President Biden's decision was also followed by, to the same extent, the decision of France and the UK, So this situation actually is very much in development at the moment. I, in general, welcome this decision of President Joe Biden and our allies, because I believe that Ukraine should have the means of such defense, so that it can push back that Russian hinterland, so that it is not so close to the front line, especially when the Russians are inviting their allies to participate on their side in this war. That's where the Corinthian soldiers are present. This fundamentally changes the situation on the front lines, and this decision by President Joe Biden, I believe, was badly needed, and it is good that it was issued, that Russia can clearly see that Ukraine is receiving strong, decisive support, and that this strong and tough attitude of the West in the face of aggression against a sovereign, independent state is absolutely relentless and consistent here. This is very important. This is a very important, perhaps even a watershed moment in this war.
To bardzo ważne.
However, aides and allies of incoming U.S. President Donald Trump have been harsh. Trump's son Donald Jr. claimed that USA's military-industrial complex was trying to get World War III started for profit before Trump takes over and creates peace. Billionaire Elon Musk, who is set to be part of the Trump administration, agreed with a U.S. senator's assessment of Biden's move. Musk said true to a post by Utah Senator Mike Lee claiming that liberals love war and that war facilitates bigger government. Meanwhile, an unnamed member of Trump's transition team told TASS news agency that such decisions would come under review when the new president takes charge. Whatever Trump's stance may be, there are still many weeks before he takes charge. That leaves a long time for misunderstandings and miscalculations, which can turn disastrous as the biggest actors in the war start putting nuclear options on the table. Only the coming weeks and months will tell whether Biden's gamble will pay off and stop the war after nearly 3 years, or only escalate it further.